preach about something. This is a difficult time of year for a lot of people. And, of course, in the life of this church, we've had several losses. People pass away, family members are in heaven. And so, Thanksgiving, those special occasions without the loved one are kind of a mixed bag, It's sorrow, and yet we rejoice that they're better off, those kind of things. But it's still different. So, tonight, we're singing All Is Well. And I thought about that phrase in the Bible. So we're in 2 Kings chapter 4, if you'll get there. And I've entitled this, Can You Say All Is Well Today? And that's a good question, isn't it? Put that out there on the sign. I don't have you to see that driving by. There's a lot of people driving in front of this church. Can you say all is well today? And so our text is going to be 2 Kings chapter 4, verses 8 to 37. And so if you'll have your Bible open, we'll just go right through that passage. Now, the phrase of the day. So tonight, we got bookends, right? This morning and tonight. The phrase of the day is simply, all is well. Can you say that with me? All is well. Very good. All is well. And so this morning, we're going to hear this phrase. Tonight we're going to hear this phrase. And the phrase, all is well, is not to be confused with the phrase, all's well that ends well. Right? You know about that phrase. All's well that ends well. And we love stories that have happy endings. Right? So the phrase, all's well that ends well, basically means that if the outcome of the situation is happy, if it ends well, then it somehow compensates for any of the previous difficulty or unpleasantness that was on the way to a happy ending. Are you with me? For example, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. He was mocked by his peers because of his shiny nose. And he wasn't, I think the text says, he was not able to enter into any reindeer game. And all wasn't well, right? All wasn't well with Rudolph. Kids can be brutal, and I suppose reindeers too. And until Santa discovered, he asked him to guide his sleigh at night. And then, the ending of the story. It's a good ending, right? I mean, Rudolph discovered that all is well when you go from being a zero to a hero. So our text passage, I just want you to look at this account, is one of those happy endings. It has a happy ending, and it's an account of the life of Elijah, except it has a twist. It has a twist. And so the main character in this account, the amazing thing, the main character claimed all was well in her life when there was no happy ending in sight. Are you with me? I mean, she didn't say that at the end. She said that right in the middle. It's one thing to say all is well when your life seems to be problem-free. You've got a good stretch of road. You know what I mean? How long has it been since you had a good stretch of road? Or when you all of a sudden your problems are just dissolved right before your eyes, our college students are here. You finish the semester, you feel like 1,000 pounds just weight just falls right off your shoulders when you wrap up that semester, and you get all those projects through. That's a great feeling. It's good to say all is well then. Well, it's another thing to say all is well when the problems persist, when there's no hope of relief, no resolution to the situation in sight. The difference is viewing your life from God's perspective. So, 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 8. And it fell on a day that Elisha passed to Shunem, where was a great woman, and she constrained him to eat bread. So it was. Notice, as he passed by, he turned in hither to eat bread. And so in this passage, we see the prophet Elisha, as he was going about the country, You know, we used to have our circuit riding preachers. Well, this was a circuit riding prophet. So he's making his rounds, his circuit. He has Gehazi, his servant, in tow. And as they made their circuit, they came to this town called Shunem. This is an ancient map of Palestine or Israel. And so this Shunem, as you can see, is in the area of Galilee, we would call it. The northern part of Israel, the valley of Esdraelon. And so we'll be talking about going from there to Mount Carmel. So you can kind of see the path there. History tells us that this place, Shunem, was very rich valley. It's a very rich farming area. The soil's the best, they say, in the nation. And Jezreel Valley and that part, it is. I've been there, I've seen it. So once in Shunem, and there's Elisha, he's the bald-headed one. Yeah, he was. He was follically challenged. No doubt some of you are your favorite prophet. Once in Shunem, Elisha and his servant come to the house of this great, notice right in her text, she's called a great woman. She's prominent, a prominent woman. That word great can speak of a person's wealth. It can speak of a person's influence. It can also speak of a person's character. Well, in this case, as you will see, it's really all of the above. She certainly is great in the sense that she's somewhat wealthy. She's also exercised considerable influence in that community. And as we'll see, she possessed some great qualities that formed her character. Already in verse 8, we can see that she certainly was a special woman because she was giving. She was hospitable. She had a giving, caring heart. And as Elijah comes near this woman's house, what does she do? She compels him to come inside, to stop, take a load off, and enjoy a meal. And Elijah and his servant certainly do comply. And quickly, a good tradition begins, Every time Elisha's in the area, where there's a standing invitation to stop over, why not? And enjoy a free meal. And don't you know, with Elisha and Gehazi, this was a planned stop, It's kind of like a Baptist church. You do anything 3 times in a row, you got to do it till God comes. So, hey, I'm not going to pass that up. So this became part of their life and their service to God. Well, verses 9 and 10. And she said unto her husband, time passes. Behold, now I perceive that this is a holy man of God, which passeth by us continually. Now, let us make a little chamber, I pray thee, on the wall, and let us set for him there a bed, a table, a stool, and a candlestick. And it shall be that when he comes to us, he can just park it here. Okay? He can just park it here. He can come into there. So over time, this great woman saw the opportunity to meet an even greater need in the life and ministry of Elijah. Isn't that a great heart to see more that you can do, for God? Right?
Amen.
Not just, what you do, but an opportunity to do more as we're looking toward the new year, recognizing that Elijah was a holy man, set apart unto God. What did she do? She asked her husband, she petitioned her husband to provide what today we would call a bed and breakfast. Okay? Let's just have a bed and breakfast for the servant of the Lord as he comes to this region. It was nothing fancy, no doubt, but there was a place where the prophet could stop and be refreshed as he fulfilled his ministry. And so in her generosity, the woman provides a room. Somebody would call it a prophet's quarters. All right? So just for him, so that he has a place. And notice, she furnishes it with 4 items. She provides a bed, and the bed speaks of needed rest. And so as Elisha moved about, working with people, teaching, dealing with people, well, no doubt he grew weary, and he needed a place where he could rest and hang his hat and sleep. And so she had a bed. She had a table. Table speaks of food. No doubt she was a good cook. And I'm already picking up on this giving heart of hers. She knew his favorite things to eat. And And no doubt when she was there, she was so good to make his favorite dishes. So she had a table, had a stool there for Elijah, which speaks of communion and fellowship. You got an open heart, you have an open home, and you have open communication. You know, we have missionaries pastored here, and a lot of pastors pick at missionaries. And I said, I want you to know that this, I want you to think of Rodgers and your stay with us as like an oasis. I mean, we're just going to love on you, and we're going to just open, you know, you can talk. And, you know, there was time to talk here. You know, it's great. Time of fellowship, good place to be. And then last, the candlestick, which could speak of study. And the prophet certainly possessed at least a portion, if not most of the scriptures at that time, as God's revelation was progressive as far as being written down. And so it was a place he could read and meditate and on the path to another place to minister, where he could pray. And so all of this was free. And Elisha and his servant were considered her guests. Everything was provided out of the goodness of her heart. This didn't start with Elisha. It started with her. This woman took wonderful care of Elisha. And it brought to her, now listen, no end of joy. Let me tell you something. What you do for God, and it's consistent, both in the Old Testament and the New Testament, it needs to come from the heart. Amen. I mean, if you're just doing it for rote, or if you're doing it because you gotta, but then you're losing the big blessing. Come on, talk to me. Amen. Yeah, so let's just stop here. Serving the Lord with a whole heart is an all is well state of being. Amen. Number one. Have you ever said, you know, we were happiest when we were serving God? Have you ever thought that? I mean, somebody understands how it can be joyful to serve the Lord. But when I'm talking about joy, I'm not talking about yuck and happiness and laughter. But I'm not saying that's not included. But serving the Lord's a way of life. It seems like Christians were cutting it down. You know, we're giving God so little, less and less, and occupying ourselves with the world. But I just want you to know, it's a way of life. When you have joy in your heart from being a faithful servant of God, now look at this. It will give you stability in your life that produces peace and contentment and hope. Amen. You know, the work of the Lord is done by volunteer. I mean, we gave a good section of our Saturday yesterday to giving back. We had rehearsal, but we visited some people, and it was a wonderful time. It was a wonderful time. You know, serving God ought to be that way. Come on. And those who serve the Lord are more content. They're more happy with their life than those who don't serve the Lord and don't serve others. You know, J-O-Y, Jesus, others, yourself last. Jesus first, others second. She served the Lord, and we're going to learn what she did. She did for God. And put herself last. That's a good recipe for a happy life. Amen. And so, look, it's the serving the Lord from your heart is a all is well state of being. Okay? We see that in the Shunammite woman. Verse 11 through 13, and it fell on a day that he came thither, this is Elijah, and he turned into the chamber and lay there. So time has passed, and now it's a bed and breakfast, and this is a regular thing. And he said to Gehazi, his servant, call this Shunammite. And when he had called her, she stood before him. And he said unto him, say now unto her, behold, thou hast been careful for us with all this care. What can be done for you? What is to be done for thee? Wouldst thou be spoken for to the king or to the captain of the host? Well, Elisha wished to bless this woman in return for all that she had demonstrated to him love personally. And isn't that a natural thing? You know, when people give, we ought to want to give back. Our Savior says it's better to give than what? So he's right on cue. He commanded his servant Gehazi, call this woman so they could talk to her. And Elisha expressed his thanks to her as well as his desire to do something for her in return. Oh, by the way, he lets her know that he's got connection. Yeah? Hey, I know some movers and shakers. And oh, by the way, one of those is the king himself. I just want you to know, you need a tax break? Anything I could do, put a word in for the king that could kind of help you? Anything. Wow. But notice her response. Verse 13 then, just stop short of verse finishing. And she answered, well, I dwell among my own people. You know what she's saying? Don't bother. I mean, I'm content living among my people. My needs are taken care of. I mean, and by the way, she's telling him, what I do for you, I do for God. Right? I mean, she's serving God with a whole heart. That was the first point. That's an all is well state of mind. She says, look, my service, it brings me joy. It brings me fulfillment. Hey, that's enough for me. Basically, she's saying this. Now listen to me. I'm content. So, serving the Lord with a whole heart is an all is well state of being. Second, contentment is an all is well state of being. When you're less than satisfied with God's provision and God's path for your life, I want you to know that peace and joy will go right out the door. Oh, by the way, the whole American economy is built on you being discontent with what you have. You need something bigger. You need something better. Don't you love the new and improved, right? Before they told you it was everything, and now they're saying it could be improved. But being content. It's good to meet people who are comfortable in their own skin. I love people who are comfortable in their own skin. They're not manipulative. They're just happy. You know, I thought of John, the Gospel of John chapter 21, verse 22. And after Jesus communicated to Peter, he had denied him and all, he communicated to Peter his plan and purpose for his life. And that was enough. I mean, Peter, especially after denying the Lord 3 times, he should have just left it there. Come on. Yeah. But you know what he does? John is standing there and he says, well, what about him? What's John going to do? And I love Jesus. It's Nunya. Anybody know what Nunya means? What's it to you? What's it to you? You know, well, just don't worry about John. Follow me. Yeah? Follow, and it's a little wonder. Peter told the pastor Timothy in 1 Timothy 6:6, he says, but godliness with contentment is what? You know, it's just, contentment's a good place to be. You know? It's a great place to be. That God has placed me here and He's gifted me this way and I don't have to be anybody else. I can be myself. And what I do is to Him. And so we got 2 good things going here. We've got serving the Lord with a whole heart. And we've got contentment. And as this woman left the room, we see that Elisha and Gehazi kind of picked up their conversation. And so they're not going to let that go. They want to talk about, well, she may not want anything, but we need to do something for this lady. Look at verse 14. And he said, what then is to be done for her? And Gehazi answered, well, I found out. I've done a little research, good servant. Verily I say, she has no child. She has no child. Her husband is old. So this Shunammite woman was great. Yeah, she was great. She was great in her hospitality. She was great in her spirituality. She was great in her generosity, don't you think? She had this great void in her life. She had this empty, hollow place. She had this great need in her life because she was childless. Verse 15. And he said, call her. And when he had called her, she stood in the door. And he said, about this season, according to the time of life, thou shalt embrace a son. Now, what an announcement. What a prophecy it is, right? It's a prophecy. Hey, this time next year, you're going to have a child. This time next year, you're going to have a bouncing baby boy. Verse 5 continues. And she said, great! What did she say? No, my Lord. No, my Lord. I mean, you're a man of God. Don't lie to me. Don't you lie to me. Don't lie to this handmaid. I mean, this isn't the response you would expect from a childless woman. Obviously, there's a history here. Actually, there's a long, painful history here. Her husband was older. In other words, they had tried to have a baby again and again and again. And it's evident that she, collectively they, had given up on ever seeing this desire met in her life. And so the moment she heard the words of the prophet, you know what happened? A wall went up. You know? A wall went up. She didn't want the prophet to get her hopes up again, only to be dashed, only to be spoiled. She had suffered enough. And I don't think it's that she's bitter. I don't think that she's resentful. She had just reconciled herself to being childless. She's dealt with it. And she's moved on. And she's not going back. So let me just add another thing here. Not only serving the Lord with the whole heart is an all-of-well state of being, and being content with what's in your life, a state of being. I'll add a third thing. Acceptance is an all-is-well state of being. I mean, we can't control everything that comes our way in life. But I tell you what we can control. We can control our response. And so this woman, she obviously didn't choose to be childless. And I'm sure she dreamed of having a family. Perhaps even a big family. But guess what? It just didn't happen. And she had accepted it. This is big. She had accepted it. She wasn't angry. She wasn't resentful. But it's clear, nay, she said. It's clear that she didn't want to go revisit her pain. She didn't want to go revisit her disappointment. And so God honored this woman's attitude of acceptance with the promise of a son. Let me tell you something. If you're on the other side of an accident, you're on the other side of someone doing something to you, bitter, that you couldn't control, whatever. I tell you, the road to healing, and I can tell you this with experience, is just grabbing it and coming to grips with this statement. There is nothing that enters our lives but what at first comes by God.
Amen.
We go and say, evidently, this is meant to be, and just embrace it. And there is the beginning of healing in your life. And there, accepting it. God, I don't understand it. Maybe I will one day, and for sure in heaven. But I tell you what, I'm moving on, and I accept this, and I understand that this is just my life. Verse 17, and the woman conceived, and bare a son at that season that Elijah had said unto her, according to the time of life. And so this prophecy came true. I mean, put a blue bow on a big baby boy, right? And wrap him in joy. I mean, that came. We can only imagine. And you see it today. Don't you see it today? A couple has a baby, and it just brings so much joy. Hey, forget about the couple, the grandparents.
Amen.
A baby can bring so, especially this time of the year, brought so much joy into this woman's life. If you ask this woman how her life was doing at this time, her response would be the same as it was when she was childless. She would say, all is well. I mean, because she was content. She had accepted what God's plan for her life. And now this, And so she says, absolutely, all is well. Here's another thing. Thankfulness is an all is well state of being. Thankfulness. So we've got our list running. We're serving the Lord with a whole heart. We're content with what we have, where we are, how God has gifted us, content with your mate, content with your family, content with God's blessings in your life. You're not leaning over looking at somebody and wish I had that and he had a wart on his nose. And then you accept what God brings into your life, even though some of that isn't pleasant. And then you're thankful. This is huge. You're thankful. Recently, we've had a couple of members in our church who have had thyroid surgery. One, it took 3 hours, and one 4-hour surgery. And that little bitty, that gland that's in your, right up in here somewhere, I guess, and those scars are there. Those, they may have thyroid problems, raise your hand. And so, isn't it amazing that little bitty gland in your body can impact, to a great extent, your daily life? It makes a huge difference in your body function. Well, there's a Bulgarian philosopher that once says, "The day I acquired the habit of conscientiously pronouncing the words, 'thank you,' I felt I had gained possession of a magic wand capable of transforming everything." Wow, the power of those two words. Thank you. That show up in Elisha and Gehazi first, right? I mean, you've been good to me. I'm on the receiving end of your life. What can I do for you? He's thankful. He's thankful. This boy shows up in her life. The prophecy was fulfilled. We have the birth of a boy. And we see thankfulness. Time passes. And this woman's son now is old enough to be in the field with his dad. Let's pick it up in verses 18 and 19. "And when the child was grown," so once again, a lot of life has happened. "It fell on the day that he went out with his father to the reapers. He said unto his father, 'My head, my head.' And he said to the lad, 'Carry him to his mother.'" That's one smart daddy. That's all I can say. Yeah. God has gifted women to be better nurturers than men. I was raised, you know what you get when you talk to your dad. Well, get over it. You got this to do. You got that to do. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing either. Dads have their own thing to give. But in this case, he says, go see your mom. Go see your mom. And so the son suddenly develops this severe headache. He takes her to his mother. And notice verse 20. "And when he had taken him and brought him to his mother, he sat on her knees till noon. And then what? He died." So once the child arrives, his mother receives her boy, places him in her lap. Any good mother would do that. And she consoles him. And perhaps the child's headaches are nothing new. Maybe he's had these before. And so she held him as before, except this time it was different. The boy died in his mother's arms. That's a terrible tragedy. The promise, now think about this. The promised son is dead. Verse 21. "And she went up and laid him on the bed of the man of God." We're coming back to that room. Back to that prophet's quarters. Back to that bed and breakfast. Back to that room where the bed was and the candle and all of that she had prayed. And she came back and she laid him. And then she put him on his bed. Not hers, his. And she shuts the door. Wow. This woman takes her son who had died, lays him on the prophet's bed. It's an act of faith. And surely she's trusting God with her tragedy. Verse 22 and 23. She called unto her husband and said, "Send me, I pray thee, one of the young men, one of the asses or donkeys or colts, that I may run to the man of God, and come again. Once again, the Shunammite mother, she sets a great example. I mean, the moment she realizes her son's condition, what does she do? She seeks the man of God. She petitions her husband to have a servant prepare an animal so she can travel and retrieve her Elisha and then bring him back with her. This mother does everything in her power to bring her child into God's presence. So her first response is not a fear, it's faith. It's faith. As she lays him upon the prophet's bed. Her husband questions this. It seems like the men are always just a step behind. And the women said, Amen. Verse 23. And he said, say what? Whenever there's a couple in front of me that have a problem in their marriage, the husband's totally clueless. He didn't know why they're there. Ask her. Whoop, 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 whoop. The man's going, I go to work, I come home. I didn't leave on. And he said, what I go to the preacher today? It's not the new moon, it's not Sabbath, it's not time for church, not Sunday. This stuff is a bit clueless. Why his wife desired to find Elijah. And obviously, he isn't spiritual minded enough to connect his son's death with this miracle-working God. And by the way, by whom, where did all this stuff start anyway? It was with Elijah, right? And so she doesn't share with her husband the reason for visiting the prophet Elijah, but she does respond in verse 23b. She says to her husband, and she said, what? Talk to me. It shall be well. It shall be well. So her response is really, you look at the Hebrew there, those 3 words, those 4 words, or it is well, it's just one word, it's shalom. Interesting, it can be translated peace. It can be translated it is well, or in this case, it will be well. And perhaps she knew that the prophet Elijah's predecessor, had actually restored the life of a young boy who had died. So she's thinking, well, if Elijah did it, this is Elisha, he went to the school of Elijah, well, he can do it. And so she runs to the prophet. Verse 24 reads, and she saddled and asked the donkey, and said to her servant, drive and go forward, slack not thy riding for me, except I bid thee. So as this woman and her servant get on that donkey, she tells him to put the pedal to the metal. And they rode fast. And just as fast as that animal could take them to Mount Carmel. So we're going considerable distance to Mount Carmel. Verse 25 and 26a. So she went and came into the man of God to Mount Carmel. And it came to pass when the man of God saw her afar off, she said unto Gehazi, his servant, hey, behold, yonder is the Shunammite. Run, go out and meet her, I pray thee, to meet her and say to her, is it well with thee? Is it well with thy husband? Is it well with thy child? So Elijah sees this woman approaching. He sends his servant. Hey, is it okay with you? Is it okay? Are things all right? How about with your husband? Are things okay? How about your child? I mean, the prophet evidently sensed that this is not good. There's a problem. There's bad news here. Verse 26b reads, and she answered what? Talk to me. She answered what? She's not waiting for the happy ending. In the midst, she says, it is well. Once again, shalom. It is well, or it will be well. Was this the case? Well, by no means. Everything wasn't well with this woman. I mean, the son she hadn't asked God for, but dearly loved, had died in her lap. Is it well? Well, what do you think? This woman didn't know if God or his prophet could or would do anything about her son. But she responded, shalom, it will be well. And I want you to know, there's faith all over that. As she lays that son in the prophet's quarters on his bed, she's acting in faith. As she tells her husband, it's going to be okay. when the prophet's servant asks him how things are going, she responds, it's okay. It's going to be okay. With the eye of faith, this mother could see her son alive again. And you turn to Hebrews chapter 11. You've got the great hall of fame of faith. And by faith Noah built the ark. And by faith the walls of Jericho came down. And by faith, and by faith, and by faith. Name, 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 name. You get to the end of that chapter, no names. But people. Men and women who responded in faith. And I think this nameless woman is in verse 35a of Hebrews 11, where it says that women received their dead raised to life again. So we've got serving God with a whole heart. We've got contentment. We've got acceptance. We've got thanksgiving. Come on. And we've got faith. An attitude of faith in the face of tragedy is an all is well state of being. The presence of faith doesn't mean the absence of fear. And while fear and anger and sorrow and grief can exist in the presence of faith, they do not rule over us. Yeah, she's putting her spurs into the flanks of that animal. Yeah, they're in a hurry. She's anxious. Yeah, there's fear there. But yet, the dominating attitude of this woman is faith. If faith looks at a difficult and impossible situation straight in the eyes, and I've talked to you this before about this, is look at everything, okay, it's good to be thankful, come on, and be content, and everything that's good. Come on, talk to me. But then there's that other side of that tablet where it's not good. Do you just act like it's not there? No. You look right at each one of those things. So I want you to think about what's not good in your life right now. But when you look at it, you write two words, and you know what they are, don't you? By each thing in your life right now that's not right, you write two words. Faith does. But God. I mean, this is bad, and so Sister Ann said amen. So Wednesday night she said, pray for Haley. Pray for her baby, right? But God. To me, it doesn't look good, but God. Come on. I mean, to me, I can't see any hope. And to me, I've had this relationship problem. To me, I wish I could change this person. And I wish I could get through. But God can. I can't. But God can. Come on. I can't rectify it. But God can. Faith figures God into the equation. It's not that you ignore it. It's not that it's not there. You just look at it with faith. And, Jesus our Savior said in Mark 10:23, with men it is impossible, but what? God. Not with God. But with God, what? Verse 27. And when she came to the man of God on the hill, she caught him by the feet. But Gehazi came near and thrust her away. Oh, what a scene. And the man of God said, let her alone. Her soul is vexed, deeply grieved. I told you, just because you grieve, just because you have a bit of fear or whatever, doesn't mean you're not acting in faith. It's always going to be there. It's just not in control. He says she's deeply grieved within. And the Lord hath hid from me and hath not told me. I don't know why. This mother's faith convinced her that somehow Elisha could be instrumental in again doing the seemingly impossible in her life. She thought, well, if Elisha could pronounce life to my dead womb, if she could pronounce life to my childless situation, certainly right now, once more, she could give life to my son. Verse 28. Then she said, did I desire a son, my Lord? Oh, I love this. Did I not say, don't you lie to me? Whoa, this woman's something else. Hebrew word here for deceive has the idea of disappointing someone through neglect of duty. You know what she's doing here? She's reminded, oh, this is good. She reminded Elijah, oh, I was content. And I had accepted the fact that I was, what? Never, and this started with you, not me. It was your idea, not mine. And therefore, do something about it, son. There's expectations here. She's saying, you got responsibility here. Verse 29. Then he said to Gehazi, gird up thy loins, take thy staff in thy, take my staff in thy hand, and go thy way. If thou meet any man, salute not. In other words, just don't delay. Don't delay. Lay my staff on the face of the child. And so he did that. He received, Elijah first received, he dispatched Gehazi with his staff, and off we go. Off we go. Verse 20. And the mother of the child said, as the Lord liveth, as my soul liveth, I will not leave you. And he arose, Elisha, and followed her. Well, why did he send his servant with his staff? You know what I'm thinking? Elisha's up in years. He fears that the servant can get there a lot quicker than he can. So he gives his staff, handle it, take care of it. Because you know what? This mother refused to be satisfied with this level of ministry. Okay? Let me tell you something. You can have a staff, but there's some things that, only you cannot give anyone else. You need to do it yourself. Come on. And you can have other things. But there's things only God has you to do. Come on. There's some, I'm not going to say it. I'm not. But this mother refused to be satisfied with anything less than the personal presence and involvement of Elisha. Verse 31 through 33. And Gehazi passed before them, laid the staff on the face of the child, but there was neither voice nor hearing, wherefore he went again to meet him and told him, he says, the child's not awakened. When Elisha was come to the house, behold, the child was what? Dead. And laid upon his bed, just where she put him. He went in, therefore, shut the door upon him twain, and prayed to Yahweh. So Elisha closed the door, just the two of them inside, and it says that he prayed. We're not given the words of Elisha's prayer in that room. It's private. But I want you to know, it was a heartfelt petition. Thinking about Elijah. Get Elijah on top of Mount Carmel. And he prayed to the God who answered by fire, right? And boom! Right? The fire came. Boy, I tell you what, he's been mentored by Elijah. And Elisha knows how to pray because Elijah prayed. He heard him. He saw him. Boy, I don't know what happened in that room, but there was a prayer meeting in the room. So let's just stack it up. Heartfelt service to God. Contentment. Acceptance. Thanksgiving. And faith. That gets you down the road. Amen. But like that another. And that is prayer produces and all is well. Stay to be. Why worry when you can pray? Trust Jesus. Huh? Yes. Why worry when you can pray? Paul tells us that very thing. Philippians 4:7. You know it. He says, stop fretting and start praying. And when you do, now listen to me. Stop fretting. Stop being anxious for anything. And start praying. And when you do, what? The peace of God that passes what? The imagination shall keep your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. And so, prayer is always appropriate. Yes. Verse 34 and 35. And when he up to lay upon the child, he put his mouth to his mouth, his eyes to his eyes, his hands to his hands. He stretched himself upon the child, and the flesh of the child waxed warm. And I'm thinking about this miracle in progress. And when you go to the Gospels, you find that Jesus healed quite a few people, but none of them the same way. Right? He had a centurion servant, and I mean, he wasn't even there. He said, well, you go back and such your servant. And he found it. It was so. So he healed long distance. Come on. Sometimes, he just touched them immediately, and then other times it took a while. Are y'all with me? So we got him praying. We got him just, laying, spread eagle on this child. Mouth to mouth, eyes to eyes, hand to hand. And now the child's body is warming up. Verse 35. Then he returned and walked in the house to and fro and went up and stretched himself upon him. Perhaps he prayed some more. And the child sneezed 7 times. And the child opened his eyes. Well, what's the thing about 7 times? And the number, what's the number 7? And what's the time? I really don't know. But I know one thing. On my flight from Seoul, Korea to Dallas, there's a guy over here by me, because your knees are up there under your chin. And this guy over here would sneeze, had to be 70 times. You're in a contained cabin, and I'm thinking, what does he have? And I'm breathing his chest. I know one thing, sneezing 7 times will get your attention. The cure for this was sought 3 times. First time, Gehazi stepped, didn't do it. Second time, prayer, stretched himself. The third time, he opens his eyes. Verse 36 and 37. And he called Gehazi and said, called the Shunammite. So he called her, and when she was come unto him, he said, take up thy son. And she went in and fell at his feet, and bowed herself to the ground, and took up her son, and went out. And so there's your happy ending. All is well that ends well. Right? And yet, this Shunammite woman walks away with her beloved son. And as she does that, we know the rest of the story. This Shunammite woman teaches us a lesson on the power of one Lord and one surrendered life. Now unto him that is able to do exceeding abundantly, what? Above all that we ask or think, according to the power that what? Before a happy ending was in sight, she possessed the state of being that could say, all is well. So, can you say that today? Can you say that this morning? Is it well with you? Is it well with your husband? Is it well with your marriage? Is it well with your children? Is it? Is it well with your grandchildren? Are they in church? Are they serving the Lord? Is it well with you? How does today find you here? Well, you just don't know. Boom, 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 boom. But God. This Christmas season, with its superficial commercial cheer, has a way of magnifying all that is wrong in this world and all that is wrong in our lives. We can begin to take note of what and perhaps who is missing. Okay? Who is missing? Well, this is the first Christmas without.
Yes.
Oh, wow, look what they've got. Have y'all seen those commercials where, the wife buys the husband a new car? And he goes out and says, that has never happened in my life. Well, what did you get? I got a Ford truck. Didn't even know it. Bought my wife a Mercedes. Put a bow on it. And I'm thinking, that's not ever going to happen in my life. Not from him. That ship has sailed. Are y'all with me? It's so easy to dwell on what is wrong in our lives rather than what is right, what is missing, instead of what we possess. And if our perspective is earthbound, if we don't have those two little words in our vocabulary, but God, we can be overwhelmed at Christmas time. This morning, this Shunammite woman teaches us that we need to ask God for a different perspective. The greatest gifts that we can all ask for and receive this Christmas is this. Here's your Christmas list. A life of wholehearted service to God. Just, do it with joy. She not only saw a need, she saw there's more I could do. And she had so much joy in it. Well, can I do something for you? Are you crazy? I just have fun. It was fun building that missions quarters. It was fun. Second, a heart of contentment. I'm fine. I got all I need. I got more than I need.
Amen.
How many clothes do you have in your closet? And how much stuff in your garage?
Oh.
Third, a spirit of acceptance. Still struggling? About what God has allowed in your life? Angry at God? An attitude of thankfulness.
Yes.
Thankful for what we have. Blessings that are ours. As a pastor, my path takes me in a lot of people's lives. And I look at the problems and I look at the situation and I say, I think I'll take the cards that are dealt with me.
Amen.
I'll be thankful for what I have.
Amen.
Talk to me. How about a greater faith in God?
Yes.
Put that on your list. Greater faith in God. Not at the end, all's well that ends well. Who couldn't do that? Of course. I got a new pickup for Christmas. Woo! No, the payments. To be able to say all is well, right in the midst. And last, a more fervent prayer life.
Amen.
Less anxiety, less fretting, and more praying.
Amen.
And even though not as well in this life, and indeed never will be, we should think about God's goodness and grace revealed in Jesus Christ. And all is well, right? All is well. What's the worst thing that could happen to me? Well, I would die, I guess. That's be the worst thing. I don't know. But if that were the case, whether it's in Southeast Asia or somewhere in between over the ocean or here, to be absent from the body is to be. I can say all is well. Can you say that this Christmas? Can give your heart and your burdens to the Lord. Surrender. Surrender. Lay that problem, like that child, on the prophet's bed. God, it's yours. I can't and you can, and I'm a player.
Amen.
All is well. So, Father, as we close this time, thank you for the great lessons that are caught. We need that all is well state of being. We need to live that every day as your people in this world. And so, Father, I pray for us. You know who's here, and you know the list, what's not well. You know the burdens that we carry, and sometimes at Christmas are so magnified. This morning, help us all to get there with you. In the middle of the story, before anything is even resolved, just say, Lord, I'm giving this back to you. You take it. I'm not enough. You are. But regardless of what happens, I'm content. I'm thankful. I accept what I've got. And I believe that whatever happens, you're going to weave it all and work it all for good. I believe that by faith. So, Lord, it is well. And I pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. As we stand and as we sing.